All right, pen people. Hey, I'm continuing my discussion of fountain pens A through Z, beginning with using the pens that I own, and we are in the C's, and I guess we'll call this spotlight on fountain pens on particular brands. So we're on Cross. I do have one other pen in the C range, which is the this little Conway Stewart, which is a tiny little pen, probably from the 50s. I'm not entirely certain. It's made out of celluloid, cute little thing. Conway Stewart is a long-storied brand. This is the only pen I have from them, so I really can't say much about the brand other than, like many of the storied brands, it began early in the fountain pen history, made lots of pens through the 50s, 60s, and somewhere in there the pen brand died, was resurrected, and then has since been resurrected again, and so it's on its third iteration. But they're, almost universally considered great pens, but I only have the one, so I can't really say much about it. So we're going to talk instead today about A.T. Cross and Company, and here's one of their boxes. Now, Cross is another long-storied brand. It's been around for a very long time. And we'll talk a bit about that in a moment. Great pens. And let's just go back in history here. So the Cross family had a history of being jewelers. And in 1846, their company was first founded by Richard Cross. And later it was passed on to his son, Alonzo T. Cross, which is the A.T. of A.T. Cross and Company. They began making cases for mechanical pencils and other things because using precious metals because they were jewelers, but they also became known for making innovative mechanical pencil designs, and also the claim is they made the first stylographic fountain pen, and if you know a stylograph, it's those ones that have a single point, and they look somewhat like a ballpoint, but they're not. Anyway, they made the first one in 1879. I don't know if that's entirely true or not, but that is an early date, and we do know that they were making stylographs at that point. But as far as fountain pens go, they're not really well known for fountain pens, at least historically. The word is that they made some in the 1930s, but not again until the 1980s. But they've been making them since the 1980s, and they've made quite a few models since then. And the company appears to have remained in the family for quite a long time, up through the 1960s when they had their headquarters in Lincoln, Rhode Island, and then they continued on. And they were known particularly for a particular type of, and let's talk about, when we talk about metal cases for mechanical pencils, it's this sort of thing, mechanical pencils as they would have been back in the day. This is a Wall Eversharp, not a Cross, but it would have been similar to this. And I've seen Cross pens from this era, and they look very similar, pencils, and they look very similar to this one. They were mostly the kind that you twist and the lead comes out the end. Anyway, this is what they were kind of known for, and then in the 1980s they started coming out with their other fountain pens, but what they were also really well known for were their ballpoints. This is one I've had for a very long time, and I've had several, and there's a couple more floating around the house in different materials. This one is a sterling silver one. I purchased this one in Quito, Ecuador in 1987. So I've had it for quite some time. These have I think I robbed the refill out of this one to fill another pen. But anyway, these are fairly ubiquitous, or at least they were when I was a kid. When we thought of a good pen, this is what we thought of, a good Cross pen, oftentimes gold-filled. And they came in chrome, gold-filled. They had this one that was like black matte with gold fittings and stuff like that. But this one's sterling, and they're not terribly common. Anyway, they're also known for making other types of ballpoints. I can't remember what this one's called. It's got, the Morph. And they've been innovative for quite some time. They do some interesting things. This one, you twist this ring, and it makes this triangular rubber gripping section become more or less triangular depending on how you twist it. It's kind of an interesting ballpoint design, and I think that the vast majority of their product line, at least in the last 4 decades have been ballpoint pens more than anything else, and they're known for good, reliable ballpoint pens. This one uses the same type of refill as that silver one. It's just these standard cross refills. Those of you who've been around the ballpoint world know. I'm not a particular fan of ballpoints anymore. I do still have a couple of these rolling around. But anyway, as far as the company goes, let's just get their company history out of the way before we look at more of the pens. So they seem to be limping along and doing fairly well. I mean, they were fairly ubiquitous. I mean, they and maybe still are, I'm not entirely certain, the official supplier of pens to the White House, starting since the 1970s, if not earlier. But I guess times have not been particularly well to them. So by 2013, they were in trouble and they were sold to a holding company. They were able to remain in their own headquarters, and they even acquired another pen brand. They purchased Schaefer Pen Company in 2014. So the Cross and Schaefer brands kind of got bled together. It was interesting because Cross took the Schaefer brand and made it into their cheaper line, and the better quality line remained the Cross line. It's kind of like what Parker did to Wall Eversharp when they acquired them back in the 40s or 50s or whenever that was. And in 2016, the company was not doing well, and so they downsized considerably and moved from Lincoln, Rhode Island to Providence, Rhode Island. And in 2017, just a year later, it was sold to another holding company, Transom Capital. And I don't know if they're still held by Transom. I've heard from pen retailers that they've been sold again to somebody else, maybe to a Chinese company. I don't know. That was just the rumor. But they were downsized again in 2021 into a much smaller place. I think they're still in Providence, but into basically just a small office space. Because right now, if you go on their website, all you will find are just the cheap, cheap not necessarily in quality. I mean, some of them are decent quality, but the less expensive pens being made exclusively in China, and not very many of those either. And we're talking about the ATX, the Calais, the ATX Calais. I don't remember. There's some other brand, other models in there. The Bailey. Anyway, but none of their pens that I'm going to be talking about now, because the pens I'm going to be talking about now are much better quality. They were not made in China. So my oldest pen is this Cross Townsend, and the Townsend line came out somewhere, in the 80s or 90s. Basically, the original Cross pens were always these very skinny little things, and they had a line of fountain pens that were just a little bit bigger than that, the Century fountain pens. They weren't very large, and even though that was kind of the aesthetic back in the 70s and early 80s, people wanted something a little bit bigger after that, and so this was a big departure from their skinny little pens to these larger pens. And this one's a rather nice one. This is the green jade. They had made one actually that had jade in the lacquer on the pen. This one is not that. This one's just a nice jade colored lacquer. And from what I understand is that the bodies were lacquered in France. That's what I understand. But what I do know because from research is that the nibs on these pens were made by Pelican. So Cross did not make any nibs as far as I'm aware. They purchased them elsewhere. And for the Townsend line, at least at the beginning, they got their nibs from Pelican. And if you look at Pelican nibs from the same era, the feeds and the shape of the nibs are almost identical. And so, you look at that feed and you go, oh, that's a Pelican feed. It just has that look to it. Anyway, great writing pens. You can take these apart somewhat, and Crosses, the earlier Cross converters are known for being thread-in ones, but some of them weren't. This is one of the ones that was not a thread-in one. And in Cross converters have this long kind of a snout on them. It's kind of weird. I've used crossed converters and cartridges in Standard Internationals. They'll actually seal on this end, but of course those Standard Internationals won't fit in these because they need the long snout to reach up inside and engage the bottom of the feed. But and then this is not the only Townsend I've ever had. I've had others. And then to take this apart, you untwist the there's a little bit of ink on there. Untwist the feed and collar here by reverse threads, and it's the only one I've ever seen that has that. But they're kind of interesting. And then you turn it as if you're loosening it, and it tightens that back in. So if you have one of these and this ring comes loose, and I've seen that happen because this is the ring that the cap clips onto. You hear that? It's clipping onto that edge, and sometimes that'll come loose if somebody twists the barrel inside of the cap, and it can loosen up. So just if you have one of these, just so you know, you can tighten it by twisting it in the opposite direction than what you would think, and you can tighten these back up again. And these are decent pens. They don't make these anymore as far as I know. I had one that was chrome also. I gave that to my brother. Anyway, then they came out with another line that was kind of an homage to their early skinny stuff, and it was the Spire. This is my second one. The first one I had was chrome with black lacquer. But these, you know, I don't know where these were made. One of the rumors I heard is that they were made in France. I don't know. And somebody said that even that these nibs were probably still made by Pelican at that time. Again, I don't know. Somebody out there, maybe you do know. They are unusual, though. I've never seen anything quite like it. They're very small, very skinny little pen. I find that when I hold it right back here with the cross logo, not here up on this tiny truncated section. But this one is a beautiful writer. It is just a fantastic writing little pen, but it needs special refills. These little skinny ones. And I found that this one had a problem that where I would put the refill in, and then I put the barrel on, and somehow it would pop off, and it would fall down inside the barrel, and so I took to putting a pen spring down in there to hold the refill up against the feed. These ones can't be taken apart. I think you can pull these out, but I always worry about breaking them. But what these pens are really well known for is leaking. They leak between these little black bars here. Apparently these are all different pieces of metal and plastic that are screwed and glued together. And they did not seal them up properly. And so I had one, my black one, where every time I touched it right here, I would get ink on my hands because it was leaking through here. And this is where the feed is. The fin portion of the feed is right through here. And I guess it was just leaking out and coming out through here, which was unfortunate. This one, however, hasn't leaked on me. It's been a good little pen. It's cute. It's tiny. It's a skinny little thing. It's right in line with the little old ballpoints. I mean, it's a little bigger and a little bit thicker, but it's one of the thinnest fountain pens I've ever seen. You know, and it reminds me a lot of the old style stuff from, you know, a century or more ago. The only pen I know of that I have that is smaller than this is my Chelana, and I guess I'll pull that out real fast. The Sailor Chelana, which is tinier. I mean, and the Chelana is so epically small, it's just, what are you going to do? Nobody's going to have a pen that tiny, but this one's an unusually small pen, but it has a very large nib for its size, and it's a great writing pen. You're looking for a skinny pen, this is not a bad one to find as long as you find one that's not leaking. I guess I should say what happened to my other one, my black lacquer one. One of the things that Cross has always been known for is their fantastic warranty. When I was a kid, I found one of these that had been run over in the road. And somebody told me that if you send it in to Cross, they would replace or repair the parts that are, you know, damaged. I did that. And I got in the mail back a brand new Cross pen. And that was standard. Everybody knew that that's what Cross did. And so when my black one went bad, when it was leaking out through here, I sent it back to them, and instead of sending me another pen like it because they had discontinued the Spire line because of all the leaking problems, they sent me a Townsend in replacement, which kind of bummed me out because the lacquer Spire has a gold nib. This is I believe it's an 18 karat. Yeah, it's an 18 karat gold nib. And the Spire that they sent, and the Townsend they sent to me had a steel nib. This one right here is one of the Pelican-made 14 karat nibs, and it's the imprinting on it is very, very light. You can barely see it even in person. So they made good pens, but the pen that's the most epic of them all from Cross has always been the Peerless. It's got an interesting design to it. It's this big bulbous cap and still a fairly large section and body. It unscrews, unlike most of their pens, which are, pop top. But one of the things that's very interesting about this pen, I mean, there's so many things I like about it. It's a large, bulky pen. It's not quite as large as some things like, say, a Visconti Homo sapiens, but it's not much smaller. And the cap is even girthier. So it's got this interesting kind of, design to it. But one of the most amazing things about it is that, sorry, my voice is being funny, is that the nibs are made by Sailor. Now, the 125, the Peerless 125, I think that's because the Peerless was designed on the 125th anniversary of the pen line. I'm not sure, though, because that would have been a long time ago. 2021 was the 175th anniversary of the Cross Company, so you can imagine, going back 50 years from then. I don't know that the Peerless has been around for 51 years, 52 years, or whatever. But if it has, more power to them. So this is the Peerless. This is the platinum finish. I think it's just a light platinum coating on the body of the pen. It's very, very smooth, very nice. Platinum coated, shiny trim. Beautiful pen, and even though it's big and bulky and it's made of metal, it's still fairly light. And because the section is plastic, it is grippy. It's not going to slide and fall out of your hand like a lot of all-metal pens would be. And so, as far as I'm concerned, this is the epitome of cross pens. It's the Peerless. I've had another one. I had the black one that was made for the Star Wars collection. Gorgeous pen. It was, debossed in with the motif of Darth Vader. Had a bunch of accoutrement that came with it. I sold that one recently to a friend of mine. Again, another fabulous writing pen. And this one on its tip has a crystal of some sort. I think it's kind of a black one. I think they're Swarovski crystals at the tip here. The one on the Darth Vader, of course, the pen's all black. The one on the top here is red. It's a beautiful, beautiful pen. But I'm downsizing, so I needed to keep one, and that was the one that was more easy to sell. Anyway, so cross pens, as far as I know, I mean, since 2021, it seems to have gone silent. I had ordered their 175th anniversary pen, which was a gorgeous lacquered pen, green over gold, and they also had one in black and one in blue. They'd advertised it for a year prior to the 175th anniversary. I ordered one in 2020. That order was canceled. I ordered it again in early 2021. That order was canceled. And then in the spring of 2021, I ordered it again from yet another retailer. And then that one was finally canceled and refunded just recently. So it's pretty sad that they have failed so badly recently. It's not for fault of having decent designs. I don't know if it's a marketing problem, because when people talk about fountain pens, they're always talking about Visconti or Lamy or Sailor or even Pinnator or any other brand out there. It's getting a lot of attention, but Cross isn't, and I think it's too bad. I mean, they have some decent pen designs, and they had the possibility of making some fantastic pens, particularly if they were partnering with companies like Sailor and Pelican for their nibs. But maybe that was part of the problem, is that it was too expensive a model to continue with. Because these pens did seem to be overpriced for what they were. I did not pay MSRP for my Peerless at all, and had I done so, I mean, it was priced in the same range. At least the MSRP was in the same range as something like this Visconti Homo sapiens, which is kind of ridiculous considering what you get for it. But these are still, and if you can pick one up, I would do it. They are great pens, Sailor nibs, great feeling pens, great writing pens. Anyway, so that should do it for Cross, and I'll see you again when we start with the D branded pens.